She stood framed in the archway, a sly grin playing on her lips as she fastened the delicate silver clasp of a necklace, a casual confidence radiating from her. "Don't bother with dinner," Cora Caldwell announced, her voice light, almost playful, as she swept her car keys from the console table. She paused, turning slightly, her gaze flicking over Malachi Thorne. "Oh, and Malachi? I've got a date tonight. Try not to get too green with envy." A ripple of laughter followed, sharp and dismissive, as if Malachi were merely a punchline in a tired old joke, as if the last 8 years of shared bills, home-cooked meals, and countless small acts of devotion had simply evaporated. She expected silence, a sheepish chuckle, perhaps an awkward nod. That was the dance. Sling a casual insult, frame it as humor, then make a swift exit before he could possibly formulate a response. But tonight, the familiar script shattered. Malachi didn't freeze. No strained laughter escaped his lips. He simply met her gaze, his voice calm, steady, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Then I'll ensure every last thing bearing my name is gone by the time you return." The laughter died in her throat, choked off before a single breath could follow. Her hand, previously reaching for the doorknob, hung suspended in the air. "What? What did you just say?" Malachi offered no repetition, no explanation. That brief, agonizing 3-second pause spoke volumes, confirming everything. She wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a cruel jest. It was a brazen declaration. She had never expected consequences, never anticipated that he would be the one to rewrite the rules. Yet she walked out, the click of the latch echoing the finality. Malachi stood rooted, his heart hammering against his ribs, a flush of heat creeping up his neck. He realized with a chilling certainty that he didn't even know the woman he'd called his wife for nearly a decade, but he was about to find out. What if everything you believed about your partner was a carefully constructed lie? Malachi remained motionless for a full minute after the door clicked shut. It wasn't shock that held him. He was well past the point of surprise. He simply refused to offer her the satisfaction of seeing him unravel through the living room window. He stood there, as if the very air around him were made of fragile glass, any sudden movement threatening to shatter the few remaining shards of himself. Then, with a quiet resolve, he ascended the stairs and opened their closet. Not merely her side, though it dominated. Her belongings and unruly tide had long ago spilled over into his designated space. Her stiletto heels lay tangled beneath his sweaters. Her collection of opulent perfumes lined up alongside his modest shaving cream, asserting an equal claim. From the highest shelf, he retrieved a sturdy cardboard box, one he hadn't touched since his father's funeral. He'd kept it with a self-deprecating joke that he'd use it when he eventually moved out, a jest Cora had once met with laughter and an easy dismissal of his sensitivity. The irony now felt like a punch to the gut. Why holding on to nothing felt like gaining everything? He began filling it methodically, selecting only what undeniably bore his name, his birth certificate, his passport, the heavy engraved watch that had belonged to his grandfather, and a discreet folder containing the car title, a copy she didn't even know he possessed. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as if he were executing a meticulously planned escape from a blueprint etched in his mind years ago. Perhaps he had. Perhaps every ignored red flag, every dismissed warning had quietly coalesced into this very moment, whispering, "You were always going to leave like this." He opened their joint banking application on his phone, and his fingers froze. A charge for $600 from a place called the Lunar Sanctuary, a boutique hotel they'd never visited, not even for their anniversaries. He tapped the details. Champagne service, in-room dinner for two, just last night. His stomach churned, but he didn't hurl the phone across the room. No scream escaped him. He simply stared at the illuminated screen as if it were a mirror reflecting a distorted reality. The chilling thought crystallizing. She's been planning this far longer than I have. What if the truth was hiding in plain sight, just waiting for you to look? He closed the banking app, then navigated to his personal account, the one solely in his name, the one she'd never bothered to acknowledge because she assumed he had no secrets worth keeping. With a few decisive taps, he transferred the funds he needed. Then he began the systematic process of erasing himself from their digital existence. Insurance policies updated, streaming accounts signed out, password manager wiped clean, even the guest Wi-Fi password changed. It wasn't a frenzy of rage that propelled him, but a deep, pervasive ache, a quiet mourning. He wasn't merely leaving her. He was abandoning the version of himself who had starved for crumbs and called it a feast. Stop! Before you give away another piece of yourself, read this. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and orange, he was done. One cardboard box, one worn duffel bag, one laptop case. That was the sum total of what he would salvage from a life he'd spent nearly a decade building. He wanted nothing else, especially not the memories. But before he walked out, he placed one final item squarely where he knew her eyes would inevitably fall. A simple note, just one sentence, penned in his neat handwriting on the grocery list pad. Now you don't have to pretend you're joking. No signature, no farewell, no opening for debate. Then Malachi walked through the front door, the same door Cora had passed through hours earlier. The stark difference was she never expected not to find him waiting on the other side. This was the moment everything changed. He had no destination in mind, just the desperate need to drive. His duffel bag, resting on the passenger seat, rattled with every turn. A constant, physical reminder that this wasn't a nightmare he would soon wake from. Every red light offered an unspoken invitation to turn back, to succumb to the familiar. But he didn't. He drove past their usual grocery store, the quaint diner they'd always promised to try but never did, the flower shop where he'd once bought her white tulips after a particularly difficult day. She'd hated them, declared them funereal, and tossed them into the trash without a second glance. He hadn't known then. Finally, 2 towns over, he pulled into the flickering, neon-lit parking lot of a motel, one of those anonymous places with mismatched curtains and the lingering scent of bleach and unspoken regrets. It was stark, uninviting, but the bed looked clean, and the lock on the door felt secure. That was more than he could say for the hollow shell of a home he'd abandoned. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the raw emptiness of a truth finally faced. Sleep eluded him. He lay there, eyes fixed on the stucco ceiling, wondering if she would even notice his absence, or if she'd simply sigh, pour a glass of Cabernet, and reach for her phone to call him. The next morning, with a profound sense of detachment, he powered his phone back on. The screen exploded with notifications, 37 missed calls, 22 texts, all from Cora. They began with a flirtatious tone. "Okay, you win. Come home and sulk with me, big boy." Then shifted to annoyance. "Seriously, Malachi, you're being utterly ridiculous." Finally, a frantic crescendo. "Where are you, Malachi? I'm scared. Please, just call me." He didn't reply. Not yet. In just 12 hours, her carefully constructed world began to crumble. Around 10:00 a.m., he accessed the external door camera feed from their house. He watched as Cora's luxury sedan glided into the driveway. She emerged, still in the same emerald green dress from the night before, her heels clicking a confident rhythm up the pathway. She looked utterly relaxed, a faint, smug smile playing on her lips, as if she fully expected to find him inside, brooding, ripe for guilt-tripping and eventual submission. She pushed open the front door, phone still in hand, likely composing another snarky message. Then she stopped, froze. Her head turned slowly, sweeping the silence of the entryway. Malachi watched her lips move. "Malachi?" No answer. She walked deeper into the house, the living room eerily empty, the kitchen immaculately clean, the hallway utterly silent. She reached the bedroom. Her reflection in the mirrored closet doors betrayed everything. The smirk was gone, replaced by a contortion of confusion and dawning disbelief. She wrenched open the closet, his side utterly bare. She knelt, yanking open the drawer where he always kept his grandfather's watch and his wedding band, only to find it empty. And then she saw the note. She didn't touch it, merely stared as if it might spontaneously combust. She sank onto the edge of the bed, then called him again. He watched his phone light up, her name still accompanied by the saccharine heart emoji she'd insisted he had years ago. He let it ring. Then he powered his phone off again. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted and the game changes forever? She truly believed this was just a game. She thought he would break first, that he would crawl back, laden with apologies, simply because she'd labeled her betrayal a joke. But now she sat alone in a house filled with echoes, and none of them were his. By the time Malachi powered his phone back on that evening, her texts had escalated from all-caps accusations to voice messages laced with a tremor of genuine fear. He didn't listen to them. He simply watched the waveforms scroll across the screen, his finger hovering over the play button, his heart thrumming like he was about to step into a meticulously laid trap. That's what it felt like. Every attempt to reach him, every manufactured apology, every feigned concern was designed to make him doubt his own memory, to make him forget what she'd truly done. Then one message popped up that made him stop cold. "I told my mother you left. She's asking if you're okay." "Malachi, I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't go on a date, okay? I swear it was a joke. Just a stupid joke. Please come home." She was calling in the reinforcements. Her mother, the same woman who, years ago at Thanksgiving, had called him too gentle for Cora. She'd said it with a smile, a supposed compliment. He'd thought she meant kind. What she meant was weak. Cora hadn't denied it. She just laughed. But now Cora was weaponizing that very image of him. The soft husband, the harmless one, the man she could manipulate and mold like warm taffy, hoping he would capitulate because she'd donned a sad face and uttered the word, "please." Here's what no one tells you about manipulative apologies. They're never about remorse, only control. Instead, Malachi sought refuge in the only place he still felt truly invisible, a quiet coffee shop downtown with its perpetually flickering lights and a broken outlet in a corner no one ever chose. He slipped into that forgotten seat and simply observed. Couples ordering lattes together, teenagers bickering playfully over who would pay, a man valiantly attempting to read a newspaper while his children spilled hot cocoa. He longed to reach into their lives, to borrow just an ounce of their normal. But his own normal was gone, eroded year after agonizing year. One dismissive insult, one cruel joke, one condescending eye roll at a time. That's when she sent the photo. It was the emerald green dress, artfully laid flat across their bed, her heels positioned neatly beside it. The caption read, "I took it off for you. Please let me fix this." Fix what? The humiliation, the calculated lies, the months of watching her text with a smile that never seemed meant for him, the girls' nights that somehow ended with her smelling faintly of generic hotel soap and someone else's cologne. He didn't reply. He booked 2 extra nights at the motel. Then he ordered food, stared at the stained ceiling, and for the first time in, God, he didn't even know how long, he let himself cry. Perhaps he wasn't crying for her. Perhaps he was mourning the man he used to be, the one who would have done anything to earn back the affection of someone who laughed while walking away from him. Let her sit in that silence. Let her marinate in the profound absence of the man she truly believed would never leave. Because for the first time in years, Malachi had finally truly left. It didn't take long for Cora's manufactured silence to spiral into chaos. By the end of the second day, his phone had become a vibrant beacon of calls from people he hadn't heard from in months. Her sister, her co-worker, even her old college roommate, Mara Meadows, whom he barely knew. Cora had clearly gone into full damage control mode, and it was evident from every incoming message that she wasn't actually sorry he was gone. She was terrified of what people might discover about why. He ignored every single one. Instead, he opened a separate email account, one he hadn't touched in years, reserved only for mundane receipts, spam newsletters, and the occasional password reset. He had a hunch and he followed it. He typed the Lunar Sanctuary into the search bar, the hotel where she'd spent that $600. And there it was, buried deep within the spam folder like a forgotten ghost. Thank you for your stay. We hope to see you again soon. Two guests, King Suite, date 3 days ago. Ready to learn the shocking truth hidden in your own inbox? He clicked on the link to the hotel's website and navigated to their gallery. Room 312, the exact same decor he'd once seen by accident. A photo flashed on Cora's phone when her gallery app had been left open. She dismissed it as something from Pinterest. Now he knew better. She hadn't even bothered to cover her tracks. She thought she'd never have to. He was Malachi, after all. The man who asked permission before opening her mail, who apologized when she bumped into him, who once spent 3 hours painstakingly fixing her ancient laptop charger because she refused to spend $20 on a new one. He was easy, forgiving, predictable. Not anymore. He didn't seek revenge. He craved freedom. But something within him, not anger, not truly, compelled him to leave her with one small sign, something subtle, a spark to ignite the match she thought he'd never strike. So he logged into their shared streaming account, the one she always hogged for her trashy dating shows. He changed the profile name to Don't Be Jealous. Just that. No message, no threat, just her own words, flung back like a shattering mirror. Minutes later, boom, an incoming call. Cora. He didn't answer. She called again, then finally a voicemail. Her voice wasn't sweet or playful now. It cracked, as if she'd been crying, or desperately trying not to. Malachi, what do you want from me? I get it. Okay, I screwed up, but you always take things too far. You always do this. Go silent, act like the victim. It was a joke, you know it was. Please, can we just talk? I'll tell you everything. Just come home. No, Cora. You don't get to set the rules anymore. You don't get to decide when he's allowed to hurt, or for how long. He powered off the phone again and stared at the ceiling. Same faint water stain above the bed. Same persistent hum of the cheap motel AC. Same weak Wi-Fi. But somehow he'd never felt more powerful. Sometimes the quietest messages echo the loudest. It's funny how it doesn't take shouting or slamming doors or even a confrontation to truly shake someone. Sometimes the loudest message you can send is your absolute absence, and she was finally truly beginning to hear it. 3.5 days. That's how long Malachi lasted before an insatiable curiosity began to win. Not regret, don't mistake that. He didn't miss her. He missed clarity. He wanted to know what version of the story she was spinning to the world while he remained hidden. So he powered his phone back on and went online, not to social media directly, not to his messages, but straight to one of Mara Meadows' public pages. Mara never bothered with privacy settings. He knew she wouldn't. And there it was, beneath a freshly posted selfie of Mara with Cora and a few others at some trendy cafe. The caption, "A much-needed girls' night to cheer up our sweet Cora. Some men just can't handle a joke." It wasn't even subtle. He read it 3 times before the full weight of it landed. That was it. That was the narrative. Not that Cora had crossed an unforgivable line. Not that she had humiliated him in their own home. Just that he'd overreacted. That he was too sensitive. The same tired, worn-out excuse she'd deployed for years. But here's the part Malachi didn't expect. Cora had already figured out where he was. Not through tracking apps. Not through bank alerts or GPS. She'd remembered something he never thought she paid attention to. The name of the motel his father used to stay in when visiting for work. He'd mentioned it once during a tedious drive to her cousin's wedding. She'd mocked the name. Evergreen Pines? Sounds like a brand of cheap soap. He thought she'd forgotten. She hadn't. What happens when the past whispers a secret you thought was buried? It was just after 7 p.m. when he heard the knock. Not a pounding, not angry, but soft, hesitant. He didn't move at first, but then he peered through the peephole. There she was, hair pulled back, no makeup, dressed in a hoodie and sneakers. Cora, realer than he'd seen her in years. He opened the door halfway. No words exchanged. She looked at him as if she'd rehearsed 1,000 speeches, only to have them evaporate the moment their eyes met. "I didn't sleep with him," she blurted, the words tumbling out. "I didn't. I know you think I did, but I swear I didn't. Malachi didn't flinch. He didn't nod. He simply waited. She stepped closer, stopping only when she realized he hadn't moved an inch to invite her in. It was stupid. I just wanted attention. I wanted to see if you'd react. You've been so distant. I thought maybe if I pushed you, you'd fight for me again. So that was it. Not an apology, but a justification. I wasn't distant, Malachi finally said, his voice flat. I was tired. Tired of what? She asked, her voice cracking. Of trying to prove I was worth staying loyal to. Her face fell. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. He could see it now. The cracks she'd hidden so skillfully beneath layers of lip gloss and laughter. The raw fear that perhaps this time he wasn't playing along, that the joke was finally, irrevocably on her. Malachi, she whispered, please come home. He stepped back, his hand still on the door. Home, he said, the word weighted with meaning, is where someone laughs with you, not at you. And then he closed the door, not slammed but closed calmly, fully without apology or hesitation. She remained outside for a while. He could hear her pacing. Then the click of a car door, followed by silence. That silence. It didn't hurt anymore. Act now or regret it later. Some doors are meant to stay closed. The next morning felt lighter, not in the sense that everything was suddenly fine. It wasn't, but in the profound way a person feels when they finally stop pretending. He took a slow, deliberate walk around the block near the motel. He bought a terrible cup of vending machine coffee from the lobby and sat outside on the chipped, broken bench near the dumpster. It was an ugly spot, but it was quiet, and it was honest. He hadn't known honesty in a long, long time. Then a man sat down beside him, mid-30s, wearing a worn denim jacket, a hotel room key dangling from his fingers. Malachi offered a polite nod, thinking nothing of it. The man remained quiet for a moment, then spoke, his voice low. You're Malachi, right? Malachi stiffened. Yeah. The man didn't smile, didn't blink much either, just looked down at his hands and muttered, She told me you wouldn't be here anymore. Malachi stared at him, sure he'd misheard. I'm sorry. Who are you? The man looked up then, regret in his eyes so thick it made Malachi's stomach churn. My name's Byron Bellwether. I was seeing Cora. I didn't know she was married at first. What if a stranger held the final, shattering piece of your broken puzzle? Malachi's entire chest locked, his vision narrowing as if the air around him had suddenly thickened. She told me you were separated, said you were living with your mother while sorting paperwork. She said you were a good guy, just too attached. Byron swallowed hard. I stopped seeing her weeks ago. It didn't feel right, but she reached out again recently. Said she was going to end things for real this time, and she wanted to spend the weekend away to celebrate. The lunar sanctuary? Malachi heard himself ask before he could stop the word. Byron flinched. That was all the confirmation Malachi needed. I swear, I didn't know until that morning. She left her phone unlocked on the bathroom counter. I saw your name, a message you'd sent months ago. I started piecing it together. Malachi's fists were clenched so tightly his fingers ached. Byron noticed. I'm not proud of it, he added. I didn't come here to start anything. I figured you deserved the truth, even if it's late. Malachi couldn't say anything. His heart was pounding too loudly. Byron stood up, slid a folded receipt onto the bench beside Malachi, one from the lunar sanctuary. Then he walked off without another word. Malachi sat there for what felt like an hour, not reading the receipt, just staring at it as if it were a map to a life he never wanted to see clearly. Everything she had said the night before, about wanting attention, about not sleeping with him, it was all a lie. A smooth, polished, well-rehearsed lie. And what hit him hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the crushing realization that even when caught, even when he was already halfway out the door, she still couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. She thought the broken version of Malachi would always settle for less than honesty. Not anymore. Why the betrayal wasn't the hardest part. It was her inability to tell the truth, even when it cost her everything. He didn't go back to the motel. He didn't go back to the house either. Instead, he drove. No destination, no GPS, just a gut instinct to keep moving forward. He pulled off the highway near a small town he'd never heard of. He bought a sandwich at a quiet cafe and sat by the window, watching the world carry on around him. Couples laughed. Children argued over cookies. People existed in their own stories. For once, he wasn't merely a background character in his. That same afternoon, Malachi walked into a local law office. Not because he was angry, but because he was ready. He told the receptionist he wanted to file for divorce. When she politely asked if he wanted to leave a message for his wife's attorney, he smiled for the first time in days and said, "She'll understand when she sees the papers." He didn't leave with bitterness. He left with undeniable clarity. This is how you reclaim your narrative, one courageous step at a time. Cora wasn't the villain of his story. She was the lesson, a stark reminder that love built on manipulation isn't love, that jokes made at someone else's expense aren't funny, that when someone tells you don't be jealous while applying lipstick and lies, you have every right to walk away and never look back. The night before he left that town, he composed one final message and scheduled it to send to her the moment the divorce papers landed in her inbox. It simply read, "Thank you for setting me free. No anger, no accusations, just truth." Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones that finally release you. And as for Malachi, he found a quiet place to stay. One with clean sheets, a window that actually opened, and a silence that no longer felt like a punishment. He's building something new now. Not revenge, not a rebound, but simply a life he can, for the first time, truly call his own. To anyone listening who feels small, ignored, or humiliated in their own home, please hear this. You are not hard to love. You were just loving someone who preferred control over connection. Have you ever experienced a moment that forced you to choose yourself, no matter how hard it seemed?